My name is Marissa Caldwell. I'm 34, a single mom who thought I'd hit the bottom of the barrel when my marriage fell apart. Divorce stripped me of my savings, my home, and the career I loved as a pediatric nurse. I moved back to my parents' ranch in the heart of Montana, hoping for a fresh start, but found myself trapped under their rules, their judgment, their disappointment. I thought that was the lowest I could go. I was wrong. One freezing night, in the dead of a brutal Montana blizzard, a stranger collapsed on our porch, bleeding, half dead, his cowboy hat lying in the snow beside him. My heart told me to save him. My parents told me to let him die. I made a choice that night, a choice that cost me everything. They threw me and my kids, Lila and Ezra, out into the snow for helping a man they didn't know, a man they feared. They had no idea he was Jackson Montgomery, a billionaire whose gratitude would rebuild our lives. That night, I learned compassion isn't just a risk, it's a revolution. It's the courage to stand by what's right, even when the world calls you a fool. Life has a way of breaking you down to rebuild you stronger. That night, as the wind howled and the snow buried our world, I faced a choice that would define me. I was a mother, a nurse, a daughter who'd always been told my soft heart was my weakness. But when I saw that man's blood staining the porch, I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone's son, someone's brother, someone who needed me. My parents saw danger, a threat to their rigid control. They gave me an ultimatum: send him back into the storm or leave their home. I chose to save him, not knowing it would lead us to a frozen driveway, my kids shivering, my heart pounding with fear and defiance. I didn't know then that he was a billionaire, a tech genius hiding behind a cowboy's weathered coat. All I knew was that letting him die wasn't an option. That choice tore my family apart, but it also set us free. It showed me that kindness, even when it costs you everything, can open doors you never imagined. Have you ever followed your heart, even when it meant losing it all? Maybe you've helped someone, a stranger, a friend, and it changed you in ways you didn't expect. That's what this story is about, the moment when one decision, one act of courage, reshapes your entire world. Stay with me until the end to see how a bleeding cowboy, a blizzard, and a mother's stubborn compassion turn loss into liberation. I'm Marissa, and this is my story, a true story of heart, sacrifice, and the unexpected gifts that come from doing what's right. If this resonates with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share where you're watching from in the comments. Tell me, when did you choose kindness over fear? Let's start this journey together, because sometimes, the people we rescue end up rescuing us. 3 years ago, my life felt like a dream I'd built from the ground up. I'm Marissa Caldwell, and back then, I was a pediatric nurse in Seattle, walking the halls of a busy hospital where the air hummed with hope and heartbreak. Every day, I cared for children fighting battles bigger than their small bodies, kids with fevers, broken bones, or illnesses that stole their smiles. My job was to bring them back, to hold their hands, to make them laugh even when they were scared. I'd sit with parents, their eyes red from worry, and offer words of comfort, a steady presence in their storm. I loved it, every exhausting minute. Coming home bone-tired but fulfilled was my badge of honor. One night, after a 12-hour shift, I found a note slipped under my locker door. It was from a mother whose son I'd nursed through weeks of chemotherapy. "Marissa," she wrote, "your kindness gave us strength when we had none. You're our angel." I carried that crumpled, tear-stained note in my pocket for months, a reminder of why I became a nurse. I've always been drawn to the broken, the hurting, stray animals as a kid, outcast classmates, patients who needed more than medicine. It wasn't just work, it was who I was. But that heart, the one my parents called too soft, was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. Compassion, I'd learn, comes with a price. Then came Thane. I met him in Seattle, a software developer with a charming smile and dreams that sparkled like city lights. He swept me off my feet, promising a future that felt like it was written in the stars. Within a year, we were married, and I was pregnant with Lila, my bright-eyed daughter who's now 8. For Thane's career, we moved to San Francisco, and I gave up nursing to support his ambitions. It seemed like the right choice. Love meant sacrifice, didn't it? 2 years later, Ezra was born, my 6-year-old bundle of energy with a laugh that could chase away shadows. We were a family, or so I thought, living in a cramped apartment under San Francisco's foggy skies. But 6 months before the blizzard that changed everything, I found text messages on Thane's phone, flirty, intimate, a year-long affair with his coworker. Worse, he drained our savings into a secret account, leaving me with just $200. When I confronted him, his words cut deeper than the betrayal. "You're too soft for the real world, Marissa," he sneered, zipping his suitcase. "You'll never make it without me." I stood frozen, Lila crying in her room, Ezra clinging to my leg, as Thane walked out. My marriage, my security, my sense of self, it all crumbled. I'd poured my heart into a life that betrayed me, leaving me with nothing but 2 kids who needed me to be strong. With nowhere else to turn, I packed up Lila and Ezra and drove to my parents' ranch in western Montana, a sprawling, isolated property in the Caldwell family for generations. Growing up there, surrounded by mountains and endless sky, was beautiful but lonely, no neighbors, just rules. My father, Elton, 60, ran the house like a military camp. No running inside, no loud voices, meals at exact hours, bedtime at 7:30 sharp. My mother, Lenore, 58, enforced his orders with cutting remarks. "Your kids need discipline you can't provide," she'd say, her voice laced with disappointment whenever I defended Lila from her scolding. Lila, my sensitive 8-year-old with auburn braids and a freckled nose, grew quieter every day. She'd sit for hours, drawing pictures of our old San Francisco apartment, adding sunshine and flowers to a place that was never that warm. Ezra, bursting with 6-year-old energy, suffered most under Elton's rigid regime. His joy earned him timeouts and lectures about proper behavior for young men. I'd take them to the barn or meadow to run free, letting them laugh and play where no one could judge. Those moments were our salvation, brief escapes from the suffocating tension. But Lenore saw it as failure. "You're turning them wild," she snapped, watching Ezra race through tall grass, arms spread like airplane wings. "Just like you were." My parents never understood my need to help, to care, to mend broken things, birds with torn wings, kids nobody sat with at lunch. To them, my compassion was naive, a weakness I should have outgrown. Every morning, I'd drive to the library, scouring job listings for nursing positions, desperate to rebuild our lives. But healthcare jobs were scarce, and Missoula was 2 hours away. "Who'll watch the kids?" Lenore demanded when I mentioned it. "Not us. We've raised our child." Their refusal to help, paired with their constant criticism, felt like a vice tightening around me. I was 34, a mother, a nurse, yet living under their roof made me feel like a child again, judged, inadequate, trapped. I felt like a failure, suffocated by their expectations, unable to escape the shadow of my past mistakes. Little did I know, a stranger's blood on our porch would soon force me to confront that shadow head-on, breaking us apart and setting us free. Winter in Montana is unforgiving, a force that tests your soul as much as your body. By December 15th, the world outside our ranch was a frozen wasteland, locked in the grip of the worst blizzard I'd ever seen. The temperature had plummeted to 20 below zero, and the wind howled like a living thing, clawing at the walls of our old house. Snow piled against the windows, blotting out the world, trapping us in a cocoon of cold and tension. Inside, I was tucking my kids, Lila and Ezra, into bed, their small faces pale with worry as the storm raged. Lila, my 8-year-old, clutched her blanket, her auburn braids peeking out. "Will we be safe, Mommy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ezra, 6 and restless, hugged his stuffed bear, eyes wide as the wind rattled the roof. I forced a smile, smoothing Lila's hair. This house has stood 100 years through worse storms than this, I told her. We'll be fine. I read them 3 bedtime stories that night, my voice steady to drown out the howling wind, to chase away their fears. But deep down, I felt the weight of our isolation, the suffocating rules of my parents' home, the uncertainty of our future. I had no idea that night would bring a stranger whose blood would change everything, a man whose life would collide with ours in ways I could never have predicted. Downstairs, the house was quiet, save for the storm's relentless fury. My father, Elton, dozed in his recliner, his face etched with the stern lines of a man who'd spent a lifetime controlling everything around him. My mother, Lenore, knitted by lamplight, her needles clicking like a metronome, her disapproval as constant as the cold. I curled up on the window seat, a nursing journal in my lap, trying to keep my skills sharp despite months away from the hospital. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9, its sound swallowed by the wind. Then I heard it, a dull thud against the front porch, heavy, deliberate, not the crack of a branch or the clatter of debris. My heart skipped. Probably just the storm, Lenore muttered, not looking up. But something about that sound gnawed at me, a pull I couldn't ignore. I set my journal down and moved to the window, peering through frosted glass into the darkness. A shape lay crumpled on the porch, not a branch, not debris, but a person. Dad. I called, my voice sharp, already rushing to the door. Someone's outside. Elton jolted awake, grabbing a flashlight. I threw the deadbolt and yanked the door open, the wind nearly ripping it from my hands, sending a spray of snow across the floor. There, face down in the snow, was a man, his dark coat dusted white, a cowboy hat fallen beside him. Blood pooled beneath him, stark against the snow, a sight that stopped my breath. He's bleeding. I shouted over the wind, dropping to my knees. Elton's flashlight beam caught the man's face, late 30s, stubbled, contorted in pain. Marissa, get back inside, he barked. We don't know who this is. Lenore's voice cut through, sharp as ice. He could be a criminal, a drifter. Think of the kids upstairs. But I was already turning him over, my hands moving on instinct, my nurse's training taking hold. His breathing was shallow, his skin ice cold. I found the wound, a gunshot, clean through his side. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. This wasn't just a stranger. This was a life, and I couldn't let it slip away. I knew I was crossing a line, defying my parents' fear, their rules, but I couldn't turn away. Help me get him inside. I called to Elton, my voice firm despite the storm's roar. He stood frozen in the doorway, his face a mask of suspicion. He'll die out here, Dad. We can't wait for the sheriff in this blizzard. The man's eyes fluttered open, blue and startlingly clear, locking onto mine. Please, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Help. That single word broke through Elton's hesitation. Together, we lifted him, his weight heavy with cold and pain, and carried him into the kitchen. Lenore's reaction was instant, her voice trembling with anger. Elton, what are you doing? He could be dangerous. A criminal. With the kids sleeping upstairs. I ignored her, clearing the kitchen table, my hands moving fast. He's half dead from blood loss and cold, I snapped, grabbing kitchen scissors to cut away his blood-soaked shirt. The only danger is if we do nothing. The wound was a through and through, just above his hip, missing vital organs but bleeding heavily. I applied pressure, my mind racing through protocols I hadn't used in months. As I worked, items fell from his pockets, a high-tech satellite phone, a strange metallic card with no markings, a thumb drive on a chain around his neck. I paused, my fingers brushing a folded piece of paper, crumpled and stained. I unfolded it, heart pounding. Scrawled in hurried ink, Project Aegis compromised. Trust no one. My stomach twisted. Who was this man? What had he stumbled into? Elton picked up the satellite phone, turning it over. "This isn't rancher gear," he muttered. "Who is he?" Before I could answer, the man's hand gripped my wrist, his strength surprising for someone so near death. "They're coming," he rasped, eyes burning into mine. "Don't call anyone. Not safe." His words sent a chill through me, colder than the storm outside. "Who's coming?" I asked, but his eyes closed, his body slumping as consciousness faded. I shook off the fear, focusing on the wound. "Get me towels, the first aid kit," I told Elton. Lenore stood rooted, her face a mix of fear and fury. "Marissa, this is madness. You're bringing trouble into our home." "Catherine," Elton said, his voice low, "either help or sit down." Reluctantly, she grabbed the kit, muttering about danger. I worked methodically, cleaning the wound, applying antiseptic, preparing to stitch it closed. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of what I was doing. "I can't let him die," I whispered to myself, threading the needle. As I stitched, a memory flooded back, me, 12 years old, kneeling in the barn, nursing a hawk with a broken wing. Lenore had found me, her voice sharp. "Stop wasting time on strays, Marissa. They'll only bring trouble." I'd ignored her then, just as I ignored her now. That hawk had flown again, and this man would live. I didn't know who he was or what his cryptic note meant, but I knew one thing: compassion wasn't a choice, it was my calling. As the needle pierced his skin, steadying my shaking hands, I felt the storm inside me shift. This moment, this stranger, was about to change everything, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The morning after the blizzard broke, the world outside was still, but inside our ranch, a different storm was brewing. Dawn crept through the frosted windows, casting a pale light over the kitchen where I'd stitched up the stranger, Gideon, just hours before. He lay on the couch, his breathing shallow but steady, his face pale under the stubble. I'd checked his bandages at sunrise, my nurse's instincts overriding the exhaustion pulling at my bones. He was stable, but far from safe. Moving him now could tear his stitches, risk infection, or worse. I knew it, but my parents didn't care. Elton, my father, stood at the head of the dining table, his 60-year-old frame rigid with authority, his voice low and final. "That man leaves today, Marissa," he said, pointing toward Gideon. "He's a danger we can't afford." My mother, Lenore, 58, stood beside him, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp with judgment. "You brought a stranger into our home," she snapped, with Lila and Ezra sleeping upstairs. "What were you thinking?" I stood my ground, my hands clenched, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. "I was thinking he'd die if I didn't help," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "He's too weak to move. You know that." Elton's face hardened. "We don't know him. He could be a criminal, a drifter, anything." I glanced at Gideon, his chest rising and falling, his warning from last night echoing in my mind. "They're coming. Don't call anyone." I didn't know who he was or what he was running from, but I knew one thing: he was a human being, and I'd sworn to save lives, not abandon them. The argument escalated, voices rising, words cutting like the cold outside. Lila and Ezra crept into the doorway, their small faces pale, eyes wide with fear. Lila clutched her stuffed bear, Dino, her 8-year-old frame trembling as she watched us. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice breaking my heart. I knelt beside her, smoothing her auburn braids. "It's okay, sweetheart," I lied, my throat tight. But it wasn't okay. Elton's voice boomed, his patience gone. "Marissa, it's him or us. Choose." The room fell silent, the weight of his words crushing me. Him or us. A stranger's life or my family's shelter. I looked at my kids, Lila's tears welling, Ezra clinging to her sleeve, and I knew I couldn't teach them to turn away from what was right. "I choose him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper but firm as stone. Lenore gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You're throwing away your children's future for a stranger," she cried. Elton didn't hesitate. "Pack your things. You're out." I stood frozen, the words sinking in like a blade. They meant it. My own parents were casting us out into the snow. I turned to Lila and Ezra, my heart shattering as Lila sobbed, "Mommy, where's Dino?" Her bear had slipped from her arms in the chaos, left behind on the floor. I wanted to scream, to beg, but I saw the resolve in Elton's eyes. There was no going back. I grabbed our coats, stuffed clothes into a duffel, and led my kids to the door, each step heavier than the last. As we stepped into the biting cold, the door slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing like a gunshot in my soul. The snow was knee-deep, the air a brutal 15 below zero, stealing my breath as I bundled Lila and Ezra into our old sedan. The mile-long driveway to the road stretched ahead, a white void under a gray sky. I turned the key, praying the car would start, and it roared to life, a small mercy. But halfway down, the tires hit a snowdrift, spinning uselessly, the car lurching to a stop. I shoved the gas pedal, desperate, but the wheels only dug deeper. "Come on," I muttered, slamming my hands on the steering wheel, tears stinging my eyes. Lila whimpered in the back seat, her breath fogging the window. "Mommy, it's cold," she said, her voice small. Ezra, shivering beside her, curled into a ball, his 6-year-old frame too small for this nightmare. I climbed out, the wind cutting through my coat, and tried to dig the car free with a windshield scraper, my hands numb, my heart racing. It was no use, the snow was too deep, the drift too stubborn. I leaned against the hood, my breath hitching, feeling the weight of my choice. I'd saved a stranger, and now my kids were paying the price. Gideon, weak but awake, struggled out of the car, his face pale, one hand pressed to his side. "My place," he rasped, his voice barely carrying over the wind. 3 miles west. "We can walk." I stared at him, disbelief warring with desperation. 3 miles in this cold, with 2 kids. But the ranch was no longer home, and the road was our only path. "You're hurt," I said, shaking my head. "You can't make it." He met my eyes, his gaze steady despite the pain. "We'll make it together," he said. I looked at Lila and Ezra, their faces pale, their trust in me absolute. "Okay," I whispered, my voice breaking. "We'll try." I hoisted Ezra onto my hip, his weight grounding me, and took Lila's hand, her small fingers trembling in mine. As we started walking, the snow swallowing our boots, a faint sound cut through the wind, engines, distant but growing closer. My stomach dropped. Gideon's warning flashed in my mind, "They're coming." Were they his pursuers, the ones who'd shot him? I pushed the fear down, focusing on my kids. "Keep moving, sweethearts," I said, my voice firm to hide my panic. Lila stumbled, her tears freezing on her cheeks. "I want Dino," she sobbed, her voice a dagger in my chest. I couldn't replace her bear, couldn't undo my parents' cruelty, but I could keep them safe. "We'll find a new friend for you," I promised, knowing it was a hollow vow. My mind churned with a truth I couldn't shake. I couldn't teach my kids to turn away from someone in need, not even if it meant losing everything. This wasn't just about saving Gideon, it was about showing Lila and Ezra that compassion is worth the cost, that standing up for what's right matters, even when it leaves you in the cold. Step by step, through the biting snow, I carried them forward, my heart a mix of fear and resolve. We were alone, exposed, but together, and I'd fight with everything I had to protect them, no matter what lay ahead. We trudged through the snow, my arms aching from carrying Ezra, Lila's small hand trembling in mine, the wind biting at our faces. 3 miles felt like an eternity in that frozen hell, with the distant hum of engines still echoing in my mind, a reminder of the danger trailing the man we'd saved. Gideon, weak from his wound, led the way, his steps unsteady but determined, his cowboy hat pulled low against the storm's fading gusts. I didn't know where we were going, only that we had nowhere else to turn. My parents' door had slammed shut behind us, their ultimatum ringing in my ears, him or us. I'd chosen compassion, chosen a stranger's life over their shelter, and now my kids were shivering because of it. Doubt clawed at me, had I made the right call? But then, through the pines, a structure emerged, its glass walls gleaming under the weak winter sun, its timber frames solid against the snow. It wasn't just a cabin, it was a sanctuary, a beacon of warmth in a world that had turned cold. Gideon pushed open the door, and we stepped inside, the heat of a crackling fire washing over us. Lila and Ezra ran to the hearth, their small bodies huddling close, their breaths visible as they warmed their hands. I stood frozen, not from the cold but from the weight of what this place meant, a lifeline I didn't deserve after losing everything. Gideon sank into a chair, his face pale, his hand pressed to his side. "Welcome to my home," he said, his voice rough but kind. "You're safe here." I stared at him, the man I'd pulled from death's grip, and saw something new in his eyes, not just gratitude, but trust. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He met my gaze, steady despite his pain. "My name's not Gideon Voss," he said. "I'm Jackson Montgomery, founder of Montgomery Tech Solutions." That ambush in the snow, it was about Project Aegis, a communication system my company's developing. It's worth billions, and someone wants it bad enough to kill. My breath caught. A billionaire, hiding as a cowboy, bleeding on our porch. I'd saved a man the world knew, but to me, he was just a life I couldn't let slip away. He leaned forward, wincing. "You didn't just save me, Marissa. You gave me a chance to finish what I started. Let me repay you." He offered us shelter, not just for the night but for as long as we needed. Then came the real shock, a job. "I run a rural healthcare initiative," he said. "We need a director, someone with heart, someone like you." My heart raced. A job, a purpose, a way out. But Thane's betrayal echoed in my mind, his voice sneering, "You're too soft for the real world." Could I trust this offer, this man, after everything? As I checked Gideon, Jackson's bandages, my hands steady despite my racing thoughts, I overheard his security team on a radio in the next room. "Second attack planned," a voice crackled. "They're tracking the signal." My stomach twisted. Was this cabin really safe? Were we trading one danger for another? I looked at my kids, Lila's face lit by the fire, Ezra's small hands clutching a blanket, and I knew I had to decide. Accept Jackson's help and risk the unknown, or keep running, with nowhere to go. My heart, the one my parents called weak, told me to stay, to trust. But doubt lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake, born from years of betrayal and judgment. This wasn't just about shelter, it was about rebuilding, about showing my kids that compassion could lead to hope, not just loss. Lila and Ezra were my anchor in that moment, their presence grounding me as I wrestled with Jackson's offer. By the fire, Lila sat cross-legged, a pencil in her hand, sketching on a scrap of paper she'd found in the cabin. I knelt beside her, my heart aching as I saw her drawing, our old San Francisco apartment, cramped and gray, but with flowers she'd added in bright crayon, a child's attempt to make the past beautiful. "I miss normal," she whispered, her voice so soft it nearly broke me. Normal. A word that felt like a dream we'd lost somewhere in the snow. Ezra, my 6-year-old whirlwind, was sprawled nearby, stacking wooden blocks from a basket, his laughter a rare spark in the quiet. "Look, Mommy, a tower," he called, his grin chasing away the cold for a moment. I forced a smile, but Lila's words echoed, a reminder of what I'd taken from them: stability, a home, even her stuffed bear, Dino, left behind in my parents' house. Jackson watched us, his expression softer now, the billionaire cowboy replaced by a man carrying his own scars. "I lost my brother years ago," he said, his voice low, almost lost in the fire's crackle. "Corporate sabotage, a deal gone wrong. I've been running from that pain ever since, hiding behind projects like Aegis. You remind me of him, Marissa, your heart, your refusal to give up." His words hit me hard, a bridge between his loss and mine. He wasn't just offering a job, he was offering a chance to heal, to rebuild something real. Lila's drawing, Ezra's tower, Jackson's story, they wove together in that moment, a fragile thread of hope. I'd chosen compassion in the blizzard, defied my parents' rules, and now, in this cabin, I saw a glimpse of what that choice could mean. It wasn't just survival, it was a new beginning, a chance to show my kids that kindness could light the way, even in the darkest storm. As I tucked Lila and Ezra into guest beds that night, their small bodies warm and safe, I felt a shift inside me. The doubt, the fear, the weight of Thane's betrayal and my parents' judgment, they didn't vanish, but they grew quieter. This cabin, this stranger-turned ally, was a turning point. I didn't know if danger still lurked, if those engines in the snow were coming for us, but I knew one thing: I'd keep fighting for my kids, for myself, for the life we deserved. Compassion had brought us here, and I had to believe it would carry us forward. The snow hadn't let up, but I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to face my parents, to draw a line in the sand after they'd thrown me and my kids out for saving a stranger. Jackson, Gideon, as I'd known him, insisted on coming with me, his face still pale from the gunshot wound I'd stitched up in that frantic, blizzard-lit night. We climbed into his truck, the engine rumbling to life, and headed back to the ranch, the place that had been my home but felt like a prison. Lila and Ezra were safe at the cabin, watched by Jackson's security team, but my heart pounded with the weight of what lay ahead. The road was a white ribbon, flanked by pines heavy with snow, the world silent except for the crunch of tires. I gripped the passenger door, my mind replaying my parents' ultimatum: him or us. I'd chosen compassion, and it had cost us everything, or so I thought. Then I saw it in the rearview mirror, a black SUV, its headlights cutting through the dusk, tailing us too closely for comfort. My stomach twisted, Jackson's warning echoing: "They're coming." Were these the people who'd shot him, hunting him for Project Aegis? "Hold on," Jackson said, his voice tight, his hands steady on the wheel as he sped up. The SUV matched our pace, its engine a low growl behind us. My breath hitched, fear clawing at me, not for myself, but for Lila and Ezra, waiting back at the cabin. As we neared the ranch's driveway, the SUV swerved closer, and a figure emerged from the shadows by the road, a man in dark gear, his stance menacing. I gasped, my heart racing. Jackson slammed on the brakes, but before I could react, Marcus, his security lead, appeared from the trees, moving fast. He tackled the man, pinning him to the snow in a swift, silent struggle, no weapons drawn, just strength and precision. My hands shook as I watched, the danger real now, not just a whisper from a wounded man. "Stay in the truck," Jackson ordered, his voice calm but firm. Marcus signaled all clear, but my pulse didn't slow. These weren't just pursuers, they were a threat to everything I was fighting for. I'd saved Jackson's life, but now I wondered, had I pulled my kids into a war I didn't understand? The ranch loomed ahead, its familiar silhouette a reminder of the confrontation waiting inside. I steeled myself, knowing this wasn't just about facing my parents, it was about facing the cost of my choices, and I wasn't backing down. Stepping into the ranch house felt like walking into a memory, every creak of the floorboards a reminder of the rules that had suffocated me. Elton stood by the fireplace, his 60-year-old frame rigid, his eyes narrowing as he saw Jackson behind me. Lenore sat at the dining table, her 58-year-old hands folded tightly, her face a mask of disapproval. "What are you doing back here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. You made your choice, Marissa. I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I came to set things straight, I said. I chose compassion over cruelty, and I'd do it again. You threw us out, your own daughter, your grandkids, because I wouldn't let a man die. Elton's jaw tightened, but I pressed on. This is Jackson Montgomery, I said, gesturing to him. The man you called a criminal is a billionaire, the founder of Montgomery Tech Solutions. I saved his life, and he's offering us a new one. Lenore's eyes widened, her certainty faltering. Elton stepped forward, his voice gruff. A billionaire? And we're supposed to believe that? Jackson spoke, his tone calm but commanding. Believe what you want, but Marissa saved me when you wouldn't. That's who she is. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Lenore's hands trembled, her voice softer now. We were scared, Marissa, she admitted, her eyes meeting mine for the first time without judgment. We thought we were protecting you, the kids. I wanted to scream, to tell them their fear had nearly destroyed us, but I saw something new in their faces, regret, maybe even shame. You didn't protect us, I said, my voice breaking. You pushed us away. But I'm done living by your rules. Lila and Ezra deserve a mother who stands up for what's right, not one who bends to fear. Elton looked away, his silence louder than any argument. I felt a shift, not forgiveness, but a boundary drawn, a line I'd never let them cross again. Jackson touched my arm, a quiet support, and I knew this was the moment I reclaimed my life, not just from my parents, but from the doubts that had haunted me for years. Marcus's voice crackled through Jackson's radio as we stepped outside, the cold air a sharp contrast to the tension in the house. Threat neutralized, he said. All clear. My shoulders sagged with relief, the fear of the chase easing, but not gone. Jackson's security team had tracked down the last of the corporate spies, the ones who'd ambushed him over Project Aegis, ensuring our safety, for now. I stood by the truck, looking out at the snow-covered fields, the ranch fading into the dusk. Compassion had been my armor, I realized, not my weakness. It had carried me through the blizzard, through my parents' rejection, through the danger that followed Jackson. It wasn't just about saving him, it was about saving myself, about showing Lila and Ezra that kindness could be a shield, a strength, even when it cost you everything. I'd faced my past, faced the danger, and come out stronger. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt ready to walk it, not as a failure, but as a mother, a nurse, a woman who'd chosen her own path. The snow had settled, and so had my heart. After the chase, the confrontation, the fear, I made a choice, not just to survive, but to thrive. I accepted Jackson's offer to lead his rural healthcare initiative, a chance to bring my nursing skills to life in ways I'd never imagined. We moved into a 3-bedroom rental in town, a cozy house with a yard where Lila and Ezra could play without rules strangling their joy. Lila, my 8-year-old artist, filled her room with paintings, bright landscapes that replaced the gray sketches of our past. Ezra, my 6-year-old spark, joined a swim team, his laughter echoing through the community pool, free from timeouts and lectures. I threw myself into the mobile clinic, driving to remote corners of Montana, treating families who'd never had care before. One day, a local boy, barely 4, came in with a fever that could have taken him. We got him antibiotics just in time, and his mother's tearful hug felt like a victory. Word spread, and the town started to see me, not as the failure who'd left, but as Marissa Caldwell, the nurse who cared. Even my parents began to thaw. Elton and Lenore came for dinner one night, their steps hesitant, their words careful. We didn't erase the past, but we started rebuilding, one awkward conversation at a time. Lila smiled at them, Ezra showed off his swim medals, and I saw a flicker of pride in their eyes. Compassion had cost me their home, but it was building a new one, piece by piece. Jackson became more than a savior, he became a friend. One evening, as the kids played outside, he handed me a small, silver key, his eyes warm with gratitude. "The cabin's yours whenever you need it," he said, "a place to recharge." I held that key, its weight a reminder of the journey from that blizzard night to now. Later, alone in my new home, I sat at my desk, a blank page before me. I wrote a letter to my younger self, the girl who'd been called too soft, too weak. "Dear Marissa," I began, "your heart isn't a flaw, it's your strength. It carried you through betrayal, through rejection, through a storm that tried to break you. You saved a life, and in doing so, you saved your own." As I wrote, Ezra burst in, holding a new stuffed bear, its fur soft and brown. "Look, Mommy," he grinned, hugging Jackson, who'd joined us. "It's better than Dino." His joy, so pure, healed a piece of me I thought I'd lost. Under a starry Montana sky, I realized compassion hadn't just been my armor, it had been my compass, guiding us to a life where Lila could paint, Ezra could swim, and I could stand tall. The road hadn't been easy, but it led us here, to a beginning I never dared dream of. One freezing night in a Montana blizzard, a bleeding cowboy stumbled onto our porch, and I faced an impossible choice. I'm Marissa Caldwell, and that moment, choosing to save a stranger named Jackson Montgomery, changed everything. My parents, bound by fear and rules, threw me and my kids, Lila and Ezra, into the snow for that act of compassion. They didn't know he was a billionaire, a man whose gratitude would rebuild our lives. But this story isn't about wealth, it's about heart. Compassion cost me my home, my security, the approval I'd chased for years. Yet it gave me so much more, a purpose, a new beginning, a chance to show my kids that kindness is never weak. It's the courage to stand up, to help, to believe in what's right, even when the world says you're wrong. I lost the ranch that night, but I found my strength, my voice, my family's future. Running that mobile clinic, watching Lila paint and Ezra swim, seeing my parents soften, it all started with one choice. Sometimes, the people we rescue end up rescuing us, proving that a single act of heart can light a path through even the darkest storm. Have you ever helped someone, maybe a stranger, and found it changed you in ways you never expected? That's the power of compassion. It doesn't just heal others, it transforms us. I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Where are you watching from, and when did kindness reshape your world? If this journey moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. This story was about my choice, but the next one is about my kids, Lila and Ezra, and how their resilience taught me to heal wounds I thought would never close. Join me for that, because their light is worth sharing. Compassion isn't just an act, it's a legacy we leave for those we love. Thank you for walking this path with me, for believing in the power of a heart that dares to care. Let's keep this conversation going, share your moments, and let's inspire each other to keep choosing kindness, no matter the cost.